Hello, and welcome to a mini episode of The Other Side of Sales. I'm Ashleigh Early, and I'm super excited to introduce all of you to one of our new co-hosts, Ollie Whitfield. Ollie, so excited to introduce you to everybody. Why don't we start out with you telling everyone a little bit about what your sales journey has been like?
My sales journey been like? Wow, that's a potentially long question, potentially very long answer. But
Okay,
first
we'll
off,
sa-
thanks for
we'll
having me,
we'll
Ashley.
save we'll save the long answer for at the pub with a pint once we can actually do that again. But
Yeah, hopefully not too long. But okay, I'll try and make it sort of somewhat succinct. But so I never really was a sales rep, and I famously said that saying, I don't want to be in sales, that type of thing. I said that, and I later ate those words. I put that in my LinkedIn summary for a bit of a joke. But I started by being a marketer, which is kind of an unorthodox route into it. I think a lot of people actually have a wonky journey into it, but there you go. And I ended up working for a company called CreationAgency, and just through really who the co-founders, the CEO, and other folks on the team knew, we ended up working with a lot of people in sales and in sales tech specifically. So people like my now employer VanillaSoft, people like Lead IQ, Chorus. There's quite a lot of them over time that names and faces you would know in the industry. And when you get to work with people like that, you consume a lot of stuff, you hear a lot, you get to hear a lot about sales, so much that you could probably give it a half decent go yourself without too much training. So I just did that as a bit of a side thing for myself. I wanted to see if I could win us a couple more clients, and I was okay. Never had a quota, never really had a stack like a proper team would have if I was at sales rep. But that's how I started, and glad to say I made a jump into the SaaS world now, no longer in an agency. Now I do product marketing for VanillaSoft, which is where I get to do all the fun stuff about exploring what works in prospecting. So any cold calls and cold emails, I get to spend my time looking at how sales reps spend their day.
no, and it's really interesting because you're kind of downplaying one of the most interesting thing about your launch into sales, which is you basically got your launch into sales by being one-to-one with a lot of the people that I think our listeners idealize. Like it took me, no joke, probably what, 3-4 years to get the courage to actually like go up to Morgan Ingram and John Barrows and Daryl Prale and stuff like that. And honestly, Daryl took about a decade, which is hysterical because he's just a big teddy bear. God bless him. Um,
You
but
know that when you get to that point and you ask him, he's the
yeah,
bark and the bite are different, but he's
yeah.
cool. He's a good guy.
No, it's fascinating. So you kind of started behind the scenes and then finally were like, I can do this, and came on stage. And you've been putting out some killer content since you joined VanillaSoft last year already, doing some great analysis and stuff. If you're not following the stuff he's putting out with VanillaSoft, you're missing out. They've got a great tool and a great team. I worked with them over the years as well. So that's really interesting. So kind of interesting too, that kind of parlays into how we met. Because literally, I think we met because you asked me to be on one of these podcasts with one of these companies that was your client. Or they said they wanted me on a podcast and said, oh, Ollie will take care of you.
Probably was. I don't remember which because we've done quite a few different things together over time now. But
I
if I
know.
remember right, it was either I saw you posting quite a lot, and I'm like, who's this Ashley? I seem to see her a lot. She's cool. She knows her stuff. Or
Yeah.
it was that who's cool and who's got a great audience and who knows this stuff and would probably do a webinar or something with me. I know. I'll try Ashley. Let's see what she's about. It was one of the two of those.
Yeah, it was probably something like that, or me making jokes about the British and you laughing at them.
Could well
Um,
have been that.
yeah,
Could
that
well.
I love anybody who lets me take the piss. So I think that's how kind of we connected. It's interesting how the things that we can make us feel isolated, make us feel alone, are actually some of the most common experiences in sales. Like having that thought of, I'm never going to be in sales, and now here we are. So I'm curious, what is a time in your career that has made you feel like an other?
Well, I'll be honest. Pretty much any and every time that I've been trying to sell something. So I confess, I've never held a sales rep title of any type. There's never been a quota or any tools that I've had to use like a proper sales team would use. It's always been a little bit of a side project, a bit of a hobby, sort of learning the hard way type of exercise for me. So in that way, I've not necessarily been a sales rep, but I'm trying to do their job. So in that sense, I have. The main thing I would say is probably age. So I'm quite a lot younger than you would think. I look like an old man because I have a dark facial hair and stuff like that. But I never went to university or as you would say in America, college. So that's a large chunk of my career that I wouldn't have had so far if I had have done that. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong, but what I would say with that is, because I have a fair few number of years now under my belt in this world, it's easy to do mental maths and say, yeah, he's probably like 30 or something, but I'm not. I'm nowhere near 30 yet. And I hear a lot people say, well, if you're a 24-year-old kid, or you're an SDR and you're reaching out to experienced C-level execs who are 40, 50, something like that, they've got 20, 30 years on you in the business, let alone in life and other things like that. How are you meant to teach them stuff? And I hate hearing that, because that's just yes, it is hard. I can see where it comes from. And if you don't have specific knowledge and specific skill, you can't really do that. You're not going to blow their minds away unless you're a genius. But you can teach them stuff. You can explore something if you know what you're doing and you know what you're talking about, if you've researched and learned. You can teach me just as much as I could teach you. Doesn't matter how old or young either of us are, or where we're from, anything like that. So I find that's been interesting. And I think you might actually know somebody who very, very recently has sort of hit my newsfeed about this. There's a guy who's an SDR, I think it's PandaDoc. I believe he's 19 and he's just become their SDR manager. I think that's phenomenal.
Oof.
I've never heard of anything like that, but I don't see things like that enough. Just because he's young does not mean that he doesn't know what he's doing or he can't help other people do it. Like in sports, they say if you're good enough, you're old enough. I love that saying.
True, and I think it goes the other way as well. I mean, I got promoted to management very young, my third year in sales, and I was, I think, similar in age to you are now, to where you are now. And God, I had I had a much bigger inferiority complex. I was terrified, and I went out and I hired people who were on average 8 years older than me. So I'm in my mid 20s, and I went out and hired a bunch of people in their mid 30s. And I was pretty good. Did I learn a lot? Yes. Did they teach me a lot? Yeah, but I was a pretty good manager, and I'm a better manager now. But it's interesting. If you've got those skills and whatever, then yeah, you're good enough. But at the same time, it really comes down to, again and again, being properly enabled. So you talk about having someone who's quote unquote fresh out of college or fresh into sales talking to a C-suite. They can totally do that. I would rather have someone who is properly enabled and not care about their age talking to somebody who is in a position of authority than somebody who is older but maybe less well trained. Because I don't care how confident and how comfortable and how mature you are. I care that you actually understand the value that our product brings and can properly articulate that. And that's training. That's not age. Age is the stuff like understanding how to call in when you're sick. And like, I can train that in 5 minutes. I don't have to teach someone who's 30 that, but I do have to teach someone who's 19 that, but I can teach that in 5 minutes. So if you're saying that you don't think that someone who didn't go to college or who is young can't do these jobs, that just means you're being, from my perspective, you're being a bit lazy with your training.
I'll jump in. So there's a couple of things that I noticed when I wasn't even actually trying to sell somebody at this point, but when I started to have more conversations with people really well respected and known in my industry or market, you could say, they likely have many, many, many years on me in terms of business experience and just general life experience. They can double, triple, quadruple the amount of years I have. But because I knew what I was coming with and I wanted to have specific questions, I just went for the conversation, and I knew that I'm talking about ABC. They are interested in ABC because I can see that they're doing it. If I have no ulterior motive, they will forgive my lack of sales process if it ends up being one. They're okay with that. And if it falls down to that, then unlucky to me. I can train on that and we can learn from that. But they won't forgive me if I come with a bunch of bland crap. They won't care about that. So if I come with something interesting and I can share something I think about their podcast or whatever it is, that's an example I did do. I got a lot of conversation back on that. So I would say, hi, Mr. and Mrs. Sales Leader. I see that you're doing this and your podcast looks great and your webinars seem cool. Ever thought about trying it this way? I've seen that work a little bit better. Here's why. Love to know what you think. Sorry for the unsolicited feedback, but I can't help myself. That sort of I'm not trying to do anything specifically salesy, but if it warrants it, cool. That helped me a little bit.
It's
It was more of just coming with what I naturally thought was interesting instead of, we do ABC.
it's almost like you're leading with value instead of leading with scripting. Crazy.
I wouldn't even call it
Anyone can
value.
do
It
this.
was
All
just
about
curiosity.
the value, pick your poison. But the fact of the matter is it's tailored to the individual, it's relevant, it's timely. That's always gonna resonate, whether it's coming from a 19-year-old or a 90-year-old. And I'll say this, I know SDRs who are in their 50s and 60s who are SDRs because they're looking for a relaunched career and something to do, and they're killer at this. So age really ain't nothing but a number. So moving on, helping people get to know you a little bit better. What are you most proud of in your career so far?
Most proud of. Ouch. Oh, that's a nasty. My
I
answer
gotta
should
make you
be.
brag about yourself.
Oh, well, I'm so bad at that. The tiny ego that I have. I would say it's a team effort. This thing that I'm going to describe. So it is not completely on my shoulders, but I was the runner, if you will. I sort of had to carry the bag in a way. So we produced a webinar for one of our clients back when I used to work in a marketing agency. It was for, I think I can say now, I will anyway. It was for John Barrows and his team there, JB Sales. We blew the hell out of their record for webinar signups. And that's not a $2 trillion deal. That's fine. I'm cool with that. But in terms of what we were doing, I was really pleased with how we went about it. What made the difference was we had completely opposing points of view on it. So it's 3 people, 1 host, 2 guests. And the 2 guests are rep perspective, leader perspective. All 3 promoted like crazy, broke the numbers, great session, unbelievable feedback. And when you're on a webinar and you see like 3,400 people, it's hard to not feel some energy. When, if you've ever watched any Twitch, the streaming platform, and the chat's going nuts, it's interesting to see it fly past the screen like that, and you can't even read it. It was like that. That was a nice moment of, I think we did a good job. That was a cool one.
Hit a nerve. I love it. That's fantastic. All right. So I'm kind of asking you a little bit off script here. I reached out to you to ask you to join Other Side of Sales as a co-host and to kind of join me and this community on this journey. What made you say yes?
Made me say yes. I think opportunity is an issue. So, like we talk about sometimes in other podcasts that you've done, it's the opportunity or the lack of at points that can hold some people back. So, on a selfish perspective, the opportunity is there for me to go and do some podcasts, do some cool stuff that I think will be useful and helpful for the sales world. So there's that. And on the second part of it, just thinking about, okay, well, if there's somebody there who I know is very smart, has a great experience, has a great story to tell, and they don't actually have the opportunity to share that, or maybe they do, maybe they post on LinkedIn or whatever it is, but they're not getting, like I was saying before, the attention that I think is warranted from that. We can help with that. And I'm not saying that we're going to turn the, unknown SDR who's going through it but doing a good job into a superstar. But we can at least bring a balance to the playing field. That's what I think it's about.
Last question. What's the first thing you're going to do once COVID is fully over and normal life resumes? What's the biggest thing you miss and you're looking forward to doing again?
Well, aside from seeing family and stuff like that, I think that's everybody's first thing. I would love to go and play some pool. I've got a pool cue. I've used it about twice. I love playing pool. It's like my therapy in a way. It's the headphones on, get out of your mind, complete concentration. And one day I want to have a pool table if I have a house big enough and some space for it. So that's like my getting in the zone thing. I want to play some pool.
I love it. All right. Ollie, I am so excited to have you as a part of the team. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey.
Thank you very much for having me. I can't wait to get started.